The morning sun shimmered through the crystal walls of Aurora Prime, casting long golden reflections across the palace's polished floors. The city beyond the palace seemed to hum with life, its towers and walkways alive with the movement of humans and alien visitors alike. Queen Alara stood in the royal council chamber, surrounded by holographic projections of distant star systems and the upcoming intergalactic summit. She was focused, as she always was, on the countless preparations for the grand event. Every year, representatives from hundreds of planets gathered to discuss trade, peace, and diplomacy. And every year, the weight of her role pressed heavily on her shoulders. This morning, however, she felt unusually distracted. There were reports of a minor technical disruption in the city's energy grid, a shipment delay from the mining colonies, and an update from the royal advisor about potential trade negotiations with the planet Varelia. The list of responsibilities seemed endless, and her mind raced to juggle each one. "My daughter's husband? Come here," she muttered absent-mindedly under her breath, reviewing the schedule for the day. The words floated in the air, unheard by anyone she thought present. They were simply the product of her tired mind, a slip of speech that carried no real meaning, but they were heard. Princess Lyra, who had been quietly observing from the edge of the chamber, froze. Her heart skipped a beat. She had not expected to hear such words, not here, not now, and certainly not about her. She was not married. She had no husband. The phrase seemed almost surreal, like a puzzle that had no pieces. For a moment, she stood still, unsure whether to confront her mother or retreat quietly. Lyra's curiosity quickly overcame her hesitation. She had always been cautious, thoughtful, and meticulous, but her inquisitive nature had often led her into the palace's hidden corners and forgotten chambers. Now she slipped silently from the council room, following the echoes of her mother's voice into the palace corridors. Her mind raced with questions. Was there someone she didn't know about? Was her mother planning something in secret? Or had the queen simply spoken without thinking, as she sometimes did when she was preoccupied? The corridors were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of energy panels and the muted hum of the palace systems. Lyra moved with the grace of someone who had grown up in this environment, familiar with every twist and turn of the labyrinthine halls. She paused near the communication archives, a place she rarely visited without reason. The archives were filled with records of interstellar correspondence, messages from distant allies, and detailed plans of past events. Perhaps here, she thought, she might uncover some clue to the mystery of her mother's words. She accessed the nearest terminal, fingers flying across the holographic keyboard with practiced ease. The palace security systems were sophisticated, but Lyra, being the daughter of the queen, had certain privileges that allowed her to browse information not normally accessible. She started searching for any mention of future husband, marriage arrangements, or similar phrases. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Lyra's eyes scanned hundreds of messages, schedules, and coded communications. Each finding brought a mix of relief and tension. There were plans for interstellar alliances, references to symbolic marriages for diplomatic purposes, and even ceremonial documents listing potential consorts for certain trade missions. But none of them named her. None of them were intended for her. Still, the unease lingered. How had her mother's words reached her in such precise, personal way? Lyra knew Queen Elora well. Her mother was deliberate, thoughtful, and careful in her speech. A slip like this was unusual. Perhaps someone had misinterpreted a phrase, or perhaps it was a message meant for another part of the kingdom, somehow reaching Lyra accidentally. She decided to investigate further. Lyra retrieved her personal communicator and sent a discreet message to Kale, the young engineer who had grown up in the palace alongside her. Kale had an uncanny ability to decode encrypted messages and trace communications across the city's networks. If anyone could uncover the source of the Queen's mysterious words, it was him. Kale responded quickly, arriving at Lyra's chambers within the hour. He was energetic, curious, and always ready to help. "You sent a message, Princess?" he asked, bowing slightly but with a playful glint in his eyes. "Yes," Lyra said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the racing thoughts in her mind. "I need your help. It's complicated." She explained what she had heard, the exact words, and the strange sense of destiny that seemed to hang in the air. Kyle listened carefully, nodding as he absorbed every detail. "That is unusual," he admitted. "Your mother is very deliberate. If she said that even as a slip, there could be a reason. Or it could be a misunderstanding amplified by palace systems." Lyra frowned. "I want to find out which one. I want to know why I heard it, and if it means anything for me. I don't want this to spiral out of control without knowing the truth." Hale smiled faintly, already thinking of how to tackle the problem. "Then we start with the communications logs. Anything sent to or from your mother in the last week, anything tagged as sensitive or diplomatic. We trace every path and see if something was misinterpreted, or if someone intentionally left a message for you to find." The two of them spent hours navigating the vast databases of the palace. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing maps of interstellar routes, encrypted messages, and ceremonial schedules. Every discovery brought more questions than answers, but Lyra's determination never wavered. She was not one to leave a mystery unsolved, especially one that touched her own life. As the sun reached its zenith, Lyra paused to rest her eyes. In the palace gardens below, exotic plants from across the galaxy swayed gently in the breeze. The scent of alien flowers filled the air, calming her racing mind. She realized that her curiosity was not just about marriage or secrets. It was about understanding her mother, the palace, and the complex world she was destined to navigate. Queen Alara, meanwhile, was unaware of the storm she had sparked. She continued her duties with careful attention, reviewing every detail of the summit's preparations. Occasionally, she glanced toward the corridors, sensing the presence of her daughter somewhere in the palace. Something tugged at her intuition, a whisper that Lyra's day was unusually quiet. But she dismissed it, attributing it to routine exploration. By late afternoon, Kale had uncovered a lead. A series of diplomatic messages from a distant planet mentioned the princess's future spouse in a context that was strictly ceremonial, a formal term used in diplomacy to refer to a potential alliance. The phrase had been picked up by palace AI assistants, which sometimes interpreted ceremonial language as personal instruction. That, Kale explained, was likely what Lyra had overheard. Lyra absorbed the information, feeling a mix of relief and lingering curiosity. It was a misunderstanding, yes, but it was one that had already set off a chain of thoughts and questions she could not ignore. Who would the kingdom consider as a potential ally through such an arrangement? Would these ceremonial matches ever become real connections? And perhaps most importantly, what role would she play in the future she was rapidly growing into? As the evening approached, Lyra returned to her room. She looked out across Aurora Prime, its lights twinkling like stars reflected on glass. The city was alive with possibility, and so was she. The day's revelations had opened doors in her mind, doors she had never thought to explore. She realized that life in the palace was not just about rules, duty, and ceremony. It was about discovery, understanding, and finding her own path amidst the expectations of others. Lyra finally sat down at her desk and wrote a private note to herself, a promise to continue seeking truth and understanding. The Queen's words, though accidental, had sparked something vital within her, the desire to explore her life fully, to question the paths laid before her, and to embrace the possibilities the galaxy might hold. And somewhere deep in the palace, Queen Alara moved gracefully through her tasks, unaware that a single slip of the tongue had ignited a journey of curiosity, reflection, and subtle rebellion. Lyra's adventure, guided by intelligence, friendship, and an unyielding desire to understand, had only just begun. The day ended with the palace settling into quiet, the hum of the city outside mingling with the soft glow of the lights within. Lyra knew that tomorrow would bring more discoveries, more questions, and perhaps answers that would shape her future in ways she could not yet imagine. And as she finally closed her eyes, she felt a spark of excitement. The mystery was alive, and she was ready to meet it head-on. The next morning, Aurora Prime awakened to a sky streaked with pale lavender light, the city humming with a familiar rhythm of ships docking, markets opening, and citizens moving through their routines. Princess Lyra, however, felt anything but routine. Ever since she had overheard her mother's accidental words, a quiet tension lingered in her mind, like a small spark threatening to ignite a larger fire. She had spent the night reflecting on the events of the previous day, piecing together the information Kale had uncovered. The messages that mentioned the princess's future spouse had been purely ceremonial, a diplomatic courtesy used by distant star systems when arranging potential trade alliances. Yet, the echo of her mother's words, combined with the palace gossip that inevitably traveled through the staff, made the situation feel urgent and larger than life. Lyra resolved that she could not remain passive. The palace was a place of whispers and half-truths, where small misunderstandings could grow into tangled rumors if left unchecked. She needed to understand the truth herself, before anyone else did. Call arrived at her chambers promptly, carrying his usual assortment of devices and portable holographic screens. His energy was infectious, and even in the quiet tension of the palace, he managed to make Lyra smile. "Good morning, Princess," he said, bowing with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Are we continuing the hunt for your mysterious husband?" Lyra chuckled softly. Mysterious husband indeed. But today, we go further.
I need to know how far this misunderstanding is spread. I need to know who believes what and why.
Hayel nodded. Then, we start with the palace staff. I can trace internal communications, whispers, and AI-assisted messages. The palace assistants have a way of interpreting formal language in surprising ways. They moved quickly through the palace corridors, Kale explaining his plan as they went. He would access the central communication network, tracing the flow of messages from Queen Alara's office to various departments, from the kitchens to the ceremonial staff. Even minor comments could become rumors if interpreted through automated systems or casual gossip. By mid-morning, Lyra and Kale had established the first pattern. Some of the palace staff had indeed misinterpreted the Queen's words. Automated scheduling messages flagged the princess's husband as a priority for ceremonial introductions, causing several aides to prepare for a guest who did not exist. Meanwhile, rumors had begun circulating in hushed tones, whispers of secret meetings, a hidden fiancé, and even potential political alliances beyond Lyra's knowledge. This is more complicated than I thought. The Queen's words were innocent, yet they are growing into a story that no one asked for. Kale tapped a holographic display showing a map of the palace and the flows of communication. "It is fascinating, really," he said. "Even the smallest phrase can ripple across the network. By the time a message reaches the ceremonial staff, it has been interpreted, reinterpreted, and often exaggerated. People fill in the gaps with their own assumptions." Lyra leaned closer to the display, studying the pathways. "We need to find the source of the most exaggerated interpretations," she said. "If we can address that, we can stop the rumor before it spreads further." They traced several threads leading to the palace's ceremonial department. There, staff members were busy arranging holographic invitations, polishing display chambers, and coordinating protocols for visiting dignitaries. Lyra and Kale approached cautiously, knowing that their questions might seem unusual.
"Good morning," Lyra began, her voice calm but firm.
"I am here to clarify a misunderstanding. Some messages regarding my future spouse appear to have caused confusion. Can you help me understand what has been shared?" The head of the department, a tall and elegant woman named Sorio, bowed. "Your Highness, of course. We received messages that suggested a ceremonial introduction should be prepared for your future husband. We assumed it was part of the usual diplomatic procedure." Lyra nodded slowly. "I understand, but there is no husband. No arrangement has been made, and any reference to a future spouse was purely ceremonial, unrelated to me personally. Soriel's expression softened with relief.
Oh, I see now.
It was a misunderstanding. The messages were from external allies, referring to the princess in formal terms. We misinterpreted them as personal instructions. Lyra felt a small weight lift from her shoulders.
Thank you. I hope we can prevent further confusion.
Please make sure all staff are aware of the context before more rumors form. Soriel bowed again. It will be done, Princess. As Lyra and Kale left the ceremonial department, the princess felt a surge of determination. The misunderstanding had been small, but the consequences could have been significant if left unchecked. She realized that communication, interpretation, and clarity were just as important as diplomacy and intelligence in maintaining harmony within the palace. Kale, sensing her thoughtful mood, spoke gently. You handled that well. Not everyone would have addressed the issue directly. Most would have let it grow into a story on its own. Lyra smiled faintly. I cannot let it grow on its own, not when it affects how others see me, and not when it distracts from my own understanding of this world. Their next stop was the communications archives, where Lyra hoped to trace the messages back to their original sources. She and Kale sifted through hundreds of transmissions, following threads that spanned planets and star systems. Along the way, they discovered that many messages contained formal phrases like the princess's future spouse to satisfy protocol, even when no actual match had been discussed. What do you make of this? Lyra asked, pointing to a message from a small diplomatic post on a distant ice planet. Kale adjusted the display.
It's fascinating. The phrase was used to maintain cultural respect.
In some civilizations, it is considered improper to refer to a royal without acknowledging potential marital alliances, even hypothetically. No one was suggesting a real engagement. It's just ceremonial language that has been misread. Lyra nodded. So, this is all a misunderstanding, amplified by protocol and human and AI interpretation.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how even the most innocent words can create ripple effects if people don't understand context.
Lyra took a deep breath, feeling both relief and renewed curiosity. While the situation was not dangerous, it revealed something she had never fully appreciated: the power of words, perception, and interpretation in shaping reality. Even a simple phrase from her mother could trigger a chain reaction across an entire palace, and possibly beyond, if left unchecked. By mid-afternoon, Lyra decided to confront another source of the misunderstanding: the palace assistants. These AI-controlled aides managed everything from scheduling to translation, and they had likely contributed to the exaggeration of the Queen's words. With Kale's help, she reviewed the AI logs, noting where phrases had been misinterpreted and flagged for attention. Here, Kale said, pointing to a highlighted line. The system flagged the princess's husband as urgent. It prompted several automated reminders and alerts, which then reached the staff. The AI didn't know it was a ceremonial phrase. It thought it was an instruction. Lyra frowned thoughtfully. So even the machines contributed. This is more than just human gossip. It's a mixture of automation, assumption, and formality. Kale nodded. Precisely. It's a perfect example of how systems meant to clarify can sometimes amplify misunderstandings. The trick is to correct the source, not just the rumors. Lyra spent the next hour issuing clarifications through both AI and human channels. She crafted messages explaining the ceremonial context, emphasizing that no personal engagement or marriage had been arranged. She addressed the palace staff personally and ensured that the AI logs were updated to reflect the correct interpretation. By the late afternoon, the immediate tension had eased. Staff members who had been preparing for imaginary guest laughed nervously at the misunderstanding, and the palace AI systems now understood that future spouse in these contexts was purely ceremonial. Lyra felt a sense of accomplishment. Yet, despite the resolution, a small part of her remained intrigued. The ceremonial phrase had originated from diplomatic communications. But why had her mother spoken it aloud in that precise moment? Was it truly accidental, or had Queen Alara sensed some connection that Lyra had not yet discovered? The thought lingered in her mind like a quiet question, one that would not go away. As evening approached, Lyra wandered through the palace gardens, the alien plants glowing softly under the lavender sky. She paused by a fountain shaped like a spiraling galaxy. Watching the water catch the light in intricate patterns, Kale followed, sensing her contemplative mood. "You're thinking about your mother," he said quietly. "You wonder if this was just a slip, or something more?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes,
The misunderstanding is cleared, and yet I feel as though there's more to discover. Something I cannot explain yet.
it's as if this accidental phrase opened a door I did not know existed." Kale smiled knowingly. Perhaps it did. Sometimes, even the smallest sparks can lead to unexpected journeys. Maybe this is just the beginning. Lyra smiled faintly, watching the glow of the gardens. She felt a mixture of curiosity, anticipation, and excitement. The day's events had shown her the power of observation, inquiry, and careful action. She had learned to navigate misunderstandings, uncover truth, and take control of situations that others might let spiral. And now she felt ready for whatever mysteries lay ahead, knowing that she would face them with intelligence, courage, and an open heart. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky above Aurora Prime, Lyra knew that the palace was more than a home. It was a universe of secrets, surprises, and possibilities, and somewhere within that universe, her journey of understanding, discovery, and connection had only just begun. The night settled softly over the city, the lights of Aurora Prime casting reflections across the crystal walls of the palace. Lyra returned to her chambers with Kale by her side, ready to rest but also ready to continue her exploration of the mysteries that had quietly taken root in the heart of the palace. She did not yet know where this journey would lead, but she understood one important truth. Even the smallest misunderstanding could open the door to something extraordinary. And she intended to walk through it. The morning on Aurora Prime was calm, almost serene, with soft light spilling through the crystal towers of the palace. Princess Lyra awoke with a sense of anticipation she could not quite explain. The events of the previous days, the Queen's accidental words, the rumors, and the clarification of misunderstandings had left her restless and curious. A feeling hummed in the back of her mind, a quiet whisper that something unexpected was about to happen. She dressed quickly, choosing a simple tunic and pants suitable for movement and exploration, not the formal gowns expected of her in public appearances. She wanted to walk through the palace halls and see for herself the lives of those around her, the intricate workings of Aurora Prime, and perhaps, if she was lucky, discover a new mystery. Kale arrived promptly at her chambers, carrying his usual assortment of portable holographic screens and small tools. "Good morning, Princess," he said cheerfully, though he noticed the thoughtful look on her face. "You seem expectant. Is something on your mind?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I feel as though we've solved one mystery, and now another is waiting. I don't know what it is, but I can sense it. Today, I want to explore beyond the palace's usual routines." Kael's eyes sparkled. "Then let's see what surprises the day holds."
Maybe we'll find something that the palace has been keeping hidden.
They moved through the palace corridors with quiet ease. The staff greeted them politely, though with a hint of curiosity, still aware of the earlier misunderstanding. Lyra noticed small smiles and whispered comments, but she ignored them, focusing instead on the palace's inner workings. Every hallway, every door, every chamber seemed to hold a story, and she felt a growing desire to uncover them all. As they passed through the main atrium, a messenger arrived, bowing deeply before Lyra. "Your Highness," he said, his voice steady. "An envoy has arrived from the planet Viridia. He requests an audience with the princess." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "An envoy? Alone?" The messenger nodded. "Yes, Princess." He arrived early this morning and wishes to meet you directly, as per instructions from his planet's council.
Kael glanced at her with interest.
This could be the beginning of something significant. Lyra felt a mix of curiosity and caution. She had been taught to expect formality and protocol, yet this visit seemed personal, almost unusual.
"Show him to the garden pavilion," she said finally. "We will receive him there."
The garden pavilion was a beautiful structure at the edge of the palace grounds, surrounded by exotic plants from across the galaxy. Soft light filtered through the translucent roof, casting dancing reflections on the marble floor. Lyra stood with calm composure as the doors opened, revealing the envoy. He was tall and elegant, with a warm smile and eyes that seemed to carry a quiet intelligence. His presence was commanding without being intimidating. "Princess Lyra," he said politely, bowing. "I am Taran, an envoy from Viridia. It is an honor to meet you." Lyra returned the bow, intrigued.
"The honor is mine, Envoy Taran. What brings you to Aurora Prime?"
Taran's expression was sincere. "Our council wished for a direct meeting. Viridia values the insights of Aurora Prime, especially regarding interstellar trade and cultural exchanges.
I am here to discuss possibilities and learn from your experiences."
Lyra felt a subtle warmth in her chest. There was something genuine in his demeanor, something that put her at ease despite the formality of the meeting. She gestured to the seating area. "Please, join me. Let us talk freely." As they walked, Kael whispered softly to her. "He seems sincere. Observe, but do not rush to judgment." Lyra nodded, grateful for his guidance. She had learned over the past few days that even the smallest impression could lead to misconceptions. They settled into the pavilion, the soft hum of the palace systems blending with the rustle of alien leaves. Lyra began by asking Taran about Viridia, its customs, its technological advancements, and its culture. Taran spoke openly, describing his planet's focus on sustainable energy, harmonious living, and education. Lyra listened intently, asking questions and offering her own observations about Aurora Prime. As the conversation flowed, Lyra found herself drawn to Taran's perspective. He was intelligent and thoughtful, and he spoke with a clarity that was refreshing. She realized that this encounter was not about protocol or diplomacy. It was about genuine curiosity and learning. Taran paused and looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "I must admit, Princess, our council's instructions mentioned you as the future spouse of interest," he said carefully. "At first, I thought it was part of a formal ceremonial reference, but I hope to meet you personally, to understand the context." Lyra's heart skipped a beat, recognizing the very words that had started the recent confusion. She smiled, a mixture of amusement and curiosity. "So the phrase reached you as well?" Taran nodded. "Yes, though I understand now it was ceremonial. Still, I am glad for the opportunity to meet you directly. It is better to understand and speak truthfully than rely on assumptions." The misunderstanding that had caused so much quiet tension was now cleared, and yet this meeting held a new possibility. She realized that even accidents could lead to meaningful encounters if approached with openness and intelligence. As they continued talking, Lyra found herself sharing stories of her life in the palace, her observations of Aurora Prime, and her curiosity about the wider galaxy. Taran listened with genuine interest, asking questions and offering his own experiences in turn. The conversation was light yet meaningful, formal yet personal, a balance that made Lyra feel both respected and understood. Kael observed quietly from a nearby bench, noting the growing ease between them. He had always admired Lyra's ability to connect with people, and he could see that Taran brought a similar energy, one that encouraged honesty and exploration. After some time, Taran suggested a walk through the gardens. Lyra agreed, and together they wandered among glowing flowers, spiraling fountains, and shimmering pathways. The air was filled with the scent of exotic blooms, and the soft light reflected off the crystal surfaces, creating a dreamlike atmosphere. "I must say," Lyra began, "this visit is unusual. Most envoys rely on formal reports and holographic messages. You have come in person, without ceremony, without pressure. It is refreshing." Taran smiled. "Our council believes that understanding begins with direct experience. Reports and messages are helpful, but they cannot replace meeting someone face to face, seeing how they think, how they respond." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. She realized that this principle applied not just to diplomacy, but to life itself. Misunderstandings, rumors, and assumptions could easily take root, but direct connection, curiosity, and conversation could prevent them. They reached a small fountain shaped like a miniature galaxy, water spiraling in delicate streams. Taran paused, observing it with quiet fascination. "It is beautiful," he said softly. "It reminds me that even in vast systems, patterns emerge. Even in chaos, there is order." Lyra smiled, sensing a subtle alignment in their thoughts. "Yes," she said, "and it reminds me that understanding comes from observation, patience, and a willingness to see beyond assumptions." Their conversation shifted to future possibilities, alliances, cultural exchanges, and shared knowledge. Lyra felt a sense of excitement at the ideas they discussed. She realized that the galaxy was larger, more complex, and more interconnected than she had ever imagined, and yet, through curiosity and thoughtful connection, humans could navigate it successfully. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, the morning's tension had faded, replaced by understanding, and the spark of potential friendship, or perhaps something more, with Taran. She knew that the events that had begun with a simple slip of the Queen's words had led to this meaningful encounter. Kale approached quietly, giving her a small nod. "It seems the misunderstanding has opened a door rather than closed one," he said softly. Lyra smiled. "Yes, Kale, and sometimes the best discoveries come from unexpected beginnings." As they returned to the palace, Lyra reflected on the journey of the past few days. She had learned to observe carefully, to question assumptions, and to act with intelligence and integrity. She had seen firsthand how a simple phrase could ripple across a system, creating misunderstanding and intrigue. And now, she had met someone who challenged her mind, respected her insight, and opened her eyes to possibilities beyond the palace walls. Queen Alara, observing from a distance, watched her daughter with quiet pride. She had known that Lyra's intelligence, curiosity, and empathy would guide her through the complexities of palace life and beyond. The accidental words had sparked events, but it was Lyra's own agency, thoughtfulness, and courage that had shaped the outcome. The evening settled over Aurora Prime, stars twinkling in the sky above the city. Lyra stood on a balcony, looking out at the expanse of towers and lights, feeling the quiet thrill of new possibilities. The misunderstanding had led to connection, discovery, and insight, and as she thought of Taran, she felt that the future held not only challenges and responsibilities, but also opportunities for friendship, learning, and perhaps something more profound. In the quiet of the night, the palace hummed softly, alive with secrets, discoveries, and quiet triumphs. Princess Lyra knew that the next chapter of her life would continue to unfold in unexpected ways, guided by curiosity, integrity, and the courage to explore what lay beyond simple misunderstandings. And somewhere in the garden pavilion, Taran looked up at the stars, thinking of the princess who had met him with intelligence and kindness, unaware that the beginning of their acquaintance had started with a single, accidental phrase. The dawn over Aurora Prime was soft and golden, the kind of morning that made the city shimmer like a jewel. Princess Lyra stood at her balcony, watching the sunlight reflect off the crystal towers. She felt a sense of calm and curiosity, knowing that the past few days had changed her in ways she hadn't yet fully understood. The accidental words from her mother, the rumors, the investigation, and the meeting with Taran had all created ripples that reached far beyond what she had imagined. Today, she resolved, would be a day for clarity, for understanding, and for beginning something new. She dressed in a flowing tunic that allowed freedom of movement, her favorite choice when she wished to think and explore without restriction. Cale arrived quietly at her chambers, his usual bright energy in contrast with her contemplative mood. "Good morning, Princess," he said with a grin. "Are we ready for another adventure today?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, Cale, but today the adventure is quieter. I want to understand the final pieces, the reasons, the intentions, and perhaps speak with my mother." Cale raised an eyebrow. "Ah, the Queen. That will be an adventure in itself." Together they moved through the palace corridors, observing the staff as they went about their routines. The atmosphere was calm now. The misunderstandings had been clarified, and the staff were more relaxed than in previous days. Whispers of the princess's future spouse had quieted, replaced by curiosity about Lyra's interactions with the Viridian envoy. Lyra made her way to the garden pavilion first. Taran had requested another meeting, not out of formality, but out of genuine interest in conversation and exploration. As she entered, Taran rose with a polite bow. "Princess Lyra?" he said warmly. "It is good to see you again. I hope I am not interrupting your morning plans." "Not at all, Taran," she replied. "I enjoy our conversations. They are enlightening." They walked through the glowing gardens, discussing ideas, philosophies, and the shared knowledge of their worlds. Lyra found herself enjoying Taran's insights, his ability to listen as much as speak, and his sincere curiosity about Aurora Prime. She realized this connection, born from misunderstanding and chance, had the potential to shape her future in meaningful ways. After a long walk, Lyra sensed it was time to address the heart of the matter, the Queen herself. She requested Cale's presence, and together they approached the royal chambers. Queen Alara was reviewing the summit's preparations when they entered, but her expression softened when she saw her daughter. "Lyra," the Queen said, rising to meet her. "Good morning." "You seem thoughtful." Lyra nodded. "Yes, Mother. I wanted to speak with you about the other day, the words you spoke that I overheard. I understand now that it was accidental and that nothing was intended personally for me. But it has made me think about clarity, understanding, and my own path." Queen Alara smiled gently. "I see. I had suspected as much, though I did not realize the extent of your investigation." "It was not to challenge you, Mother," Lyra explained. "It was to understand the situation, to ensure that nothing was misunderstood, and to learn from it. I also realize that even the smallest phrases can create ripples far beyond what we intend." Elora nodded, pride in her daughter's words evident in her eyes. "You are wise beyond your years, Lyra. That is why I trust you to navigate the challenges of the palace and beyond. Words, actions, assumptions, they all have weight. But what matters most is integrity, curiosity, and the courage to seek truth." Lyra smiled, feeling the warmth of understanding between them. "I think I am beginning to understand that now. And I think I want to explore what lies ahead, not just within the palace, but beyond it as well." Queen Alara reached out, placing a hand gently on Lyra's shoulder. "Then do so. Explore, learn, and connect. And know that I will always be here to support you, even when your path takes you to unexpected places." Lyra felt a surge of gratitude, the tension that had lingered for days, the worry, the curiosity, the questions, was now replaced by clarity and trust. She realized that the Queen's accidental words, though seemingly trivial, had been a catalyst for growth, understanding, and meaningful connections. Later that morning, Taran joined Lyra and Cale in the palace gardens. They walked among the glowing plants, sharing ideas about interstellar collaboration, culture, and education. The conversation was lively, thoughtful, and full of discovery. Lyra felt a sense of balance, connection with her mother, curiosity guided by Kale, and the excitement of new possibilities with Taran.
I am grateful for this meeting, Lyra said to Taran. It has shown me that understanding, curiosity, and conversation can overcome even the greatest misunderstandings.
Indeed, Princess.
And it has shown me that clarity and honesty are the foundation for any meaningful connection, whether diplomatic, personal, or intellectual. They paused by a small reflecting pool, its surface catching the light in shimmering patterns. Lyra looked at her reflection, then at Taran's, and realized that their encounter, born from a simple misunderstanding, had opened doors to new experiences, ideas, and possibilities. Kale, observing quietly, smiled.
You've turned a small confusion into something meaningful, Princess. That is the mark of wisdom and curiosity.
She had learned that the world, even in its most controlled environments, could surprise her, challenge her, and teach her lessons in unexpected ways. The ripple from the Queen's words had brought insight, connection, and opportunity. As the afternoon sun bathed the palace in soft light, Queen Alara joined them in the gardens. She watched her daughter interact with Taran and Kale, her heart swelling with pride.
Lyra had grown not just in understanding, but in confidence, wisdom, and the ability to navigate complexity with grace.
Lyra, the Queen said gently, I see that you have learned much from this experience. I am proud of you. Lyra turned, smiling warmly at her mother. Thank you, Mother. I realize now that understanding, curiosity, and patience are as important as any formal duty, and that even the smallest words can lead to important discoveries, if we pay attention. Queen Alara nodded. Yes, my daughter. And remember, life will always have surprises, misunderstandings, and unexpected encounters. What matters is how you respond, with thoughtfulness, courage, and integrity. Lyra felt a sense of calm determination. She knew that the palace, the city, and the galaxy beyond held countless mysteries, challenges, and opportunities. But she was ready to explore, ready to connect, and ready to navigate the world with intelligence, empathy, and curiosity. As evening approached, the three of them, Lyra, Kale, and Taran, stood on a balcony overlooking Aurora Prime. The city lights twinkled like stars reflected in crystal towers. Lyra felt a sense of peace and excitement. The misunderstanding that had begun with a single accidental phrase had grown into a journey of discovery, connection, and insight. She turned to Taran.
I am glad you came here, not because of misunderstandings or ceremonial phrases, but because you were willing to understand and connect. That is what truly matters.
Charon smiled. And I am glad to have met you, Princess. Your insight, curiosity, and courage are inspiring. I look forward to learning more from you and perhaps sharing ideas and discoveries together.
Kale, ever observant, chuckled softly. It seems the universe is rewarding curiosity and thoughtfulness, Princess.
I think we are witnessing the beginning of something meaningful. Ira nodded, feeling a quiet sense of gratitude. The past days had taught her that life was full of surprises, some confusing, some illuminating, but all were opportunities to learn and grow. And as she looked out at the shimmering city, she realized that this was only the beginning. The palace hummed quietly behind them, alive with life, secrets, and discovery. The Queen's accidental words had sparked curiosity, action, and reflection. But it was Lyra's own intelligence, patience, and courage that had shaped the outcome, leading to understanding, connection, and insight. As night fell over Aurora Prime, the stars above mirrored the lights below. Lyra felt a quiet thrill for the future. She had learned the power of observation, the importance of clarity, and the value of meaningful connections. She had discovered that even a misunderstanding could lead to growth, discovery, and opportunity if approached with thoughtfulness and courage. And in that moment, standing with Kale and Taryn by her side. Princess Lyra understood that her journey had only just begun. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries and possibilities, and she was ready to explore them all. Guided by curiosity, integrity, and the lessons she had learned from a single accidental phrase spoken by her mother, the night settled softly over Aurora Prime, the city alive with gentle hums of life, reflection, and anticipation. Lyra returned to her chambers with Kale and Taryn, her heart full of understanding and her mind alive with possibilities. The Queen's words, though unintended, had sparked a journey that would shape her future, guide her choices, and inspire her to embrace the world with intelligence, kindness, and courage. And as she looked out at the horizon, Lyra smiled. The story of a single phrase had ended, but her own story, the story of exploration, connection, and discovery, was only beginning.